Imagine you're at the supermarket checkout. You spot a chocolate bar, grab it, and picture a small hit of sweetness later. At home, you peel back the foil and see it again. A thin, grey-white, dusty veil on what should be a deep brown bar. It looks wrong in the exact way mold looks wrong. You don't yell. It's more like a quiet sigh, probably too hot today. You break off a piece. It's slightly gritty, slightly crumbly. It doesn't melt smooth and clean like the ads promise. But you eat it anyway. We see this so often it feels normal. Yet if fresh beef turned a dull gray, you'd take it straight back. If yogurt had odd white specks, you'd bin it without debate. So why, with chocolate, a food sold as fancy, as a gift of love, do we shrug at this huge, obvious flaw? The truth is, your patience has a logical base. Your instincts tell you it isn't poisonous. And that instinct is usually right. That pale dust is not mold. It's not dirt. Today, let's unpack why chocolate ends up with that white coating, what it actually is, and whether manufacturers have put it there on purpose to preserve the bar. To understand why chocolate turns white, you first need a clear picture of what a chocolate bar really is. Don't imagine chocolate as a simple brown paste that gets melted and poured into a mold. Imagine it more like a solid brick wall. Inside that wall are two main components. First, the hard bricks. These are the sugar and the cocoa solids. They're hard, they're brittle, and the important point is this: they don't melt at normal temperatures. Even if it's 40 degrees Celsius outside, sugar and cocoa solids are still just sitting there, stubborn as stone. Second, the binding cement. That's cocoa butter. It's a natural fat pressed from the cocoa bean. Its job is to coat every sugar particle, every speck of cocoa solid, and glue them together into a single, solid bar. When the bar is freshly made, that cement does its job perfectly. Everything stays locked in place. The surface looks smooth because the cocoa butter has been spread into an even, flat layer. It reflects light cleanly, almost like a mirror. But here's the problem. Cocoa butter is a very unusual kind of cement. It is extremely sensitive to temperature. If you're thinking of pork fat or cooking oil, those are either soft all the time or liquid all the time. Cocoa butter behaves differently. It's firm and solid at room temperature, around 20-25 degrees Celsius. But the moment it touches your tongue, around 37 degrees Celsius, it melts almost instantly. That hard to liquid fast switch is part of what makes good chocolate feel expensive. It's what gives you that satisfying melt right on the tongue. And it's also the weakness that causes trouble the moment the bar has to live on a shop shelf. So why does supermarket chocolate seem to get this white coating so often? The answer sits in the rough trip chocolate has to survive before it reaches you. Picture the journey. The bar leaves the factory cold. It goes onto a truck. If that truck is running in the sun and the cooling isn't perfect, the temperature inside creeps up a little. Then the bar gets unloaded into a warehouse. Then from the warehouse to the store. Then onto a display shelf. All the while, the temperature keeps wobbling. Maybe it's 20 degrees Celsius, then 28 degrees Celsius, then 30 degrees Celsius. For us, that shift doesn't feel like much. For the cocoa butter cement inside the bar, it can be a disaster. Once the temperature reaches roughly 25-28 degrees Celsius, cocoa butter starts to misbehave. The fat that was holding the sugar particles in place starts to loosen its grip. It shifts from solid to a thick, semi-liquid state, and once it becomes even slightly fluid, it can begin to move. This is where the bloom begins. A chocolate bar looks dense and solid, but inside it has countless tiny gaps and microspaces you can't see with the naked eye. It's like an ultra-hard sponge. When cocoa butter softens, it becomes more mobile. It is squeezed between rigid sugar particles. And by a simple physical rule, a liquid tends to seek out the easier path, the freer space. The freer space is the surface. So, little by little, the softened fat starts creeping through those microscopic pathways. It threads its way from the core of the bar, past the sugar and cocoa solids, and slowly rises up to the surface. Once that cocoa butter reaches the surface, it meets the outside air. The surface of the bar usually cools faster than the interior, so that thin layer of fat solidifies again right there on top into the pale coating you can see. At this point, a smart question appears. Hang on, cocoa butter is a pale yellow fat. Why does it turn into a white powder when it reaches the surface? That's the best question in the whole story. And the answer is in how it solidifies. Think about a bowl of pork fat, left to cool in the fridge. When the fat is hot, it looks clear, but once it sets, it turns opaque and whitish, doesn't it? The reason is structure, arrangement. In the factory, when chocolate is cooled properly, machines guide the fat crystals into an orderly pattern. When they pack that tightly, the surface becomes smooth. It reflects light cleanly. You see a glossy finish and a deep brown color because your eye is effectively looking through that smooth fat layer down to the cocoa solids underneath. But when cocoa butter rises to the surface and sets on its own, nobody is forcing order onto it. It crystallizes freely, loosely, messily. The fat crystals grow into larger clumps, stacked awkwardly, pointing in all directions. The surface becomes microscopically rough and uneven. When light hits that rough surface, it doesn't reflect in one clean direction. It scatters everywhere. Your eyes read that chaotic scatter as white, and you can feel it immediately when you eat the bar. The chocolate becomes dry and crumbly. At this point, it's natural to ask, so why don't manufacturers stop this? Why don't supermarkets store chocolate better? In reality, this is an uneven fight between people and nature. Chocolate, by its nature, is a material that always wants to rebel. The glossy, perfect bar you love is an enforced state. It's something humans produce through control. The pale, bloomed state is closer to the bar's relaxed, natural direction of travel. It only takes a small mistake in temperature, and the chocolate starts trying to drift back toward that easier state, the white state. And here's an uncomfortable detail. The better the chocolate, the more likely it is to do this. The more real cocoa butter it contains, the more sensitive it is. On the other hand, cheaper chocolate that uses other vegetable fats instead of cocoa butter can be more stable and less prone to turning white because those fats behave differently. So the final question is simple. Can you eat a chocolate bar that's gone white? The answer is yes. It's safe. No poison. No hidden bacteria taking over. The ingredients are still the same as when you bought it. Only the fat has changed position. It used to sit inside the bar, supporting that smooth melt. Now it has migrated outward and parked itself on the surface. So next time you're in a shop and you pick up a bar that looks slightly faded, look at it as evidence that you're holding real chocolate made with real cocoa butter, not some artificial wax. It's just a bit sensitive to weather. Thank you for watching.